Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
For centuries, the story of humanity's beginnings has been told in familiar tones. Adam is formed from the dust of the earth. Eve is shaped from his side. Cain and Abel bring offerings. A field becomes the site of the first murder. Seth is born as a replacement for the slain brother. The narrative moves forward, generation by generation, until the flood reshapes the world. Yet hidden in plain sight, almost whisper between the lines, lies a question that has stirred theologians, rabbis, monks, and storytellers for millennia. If all humanity descends from Adam and Eve, where are their daughters? Who were the women who carried life beyond the first generation? Why do the sacred texts speak their names so rarely, if at all? The Hebrew Bible, in the Book of Genesis, provides only the briefest acknowledgement. After accounting the birth of Cain, Abel, and Seth, Genesis 5 verse 4 states that Adam had other sons and daughters. The sentence is almost casual, a passing remark in a genealogical record focused overwhelmingly on male lineage. Yet that single line opens a vast historical and interpretive landscape. The daughters of Adam and Eve are present in the text, but unnamed, their lives submerged beneath the structure of patriarchal genealogy. From this silence grew centuries of speculation, commentary, and imaginative reconstruction across Jewish, Christian, and later Islamic traditions. In ancient Israelite culture, genealogies functioned primarily to establish inheritance, tribal identity, and covenantal continuity. Lineage lists emphasized male descent because land rights and clan membership passed through fathers. This does not mean daughters were absent from society or unimportant. Rather, the literary form of biblical genealogies reflected social structure. Women appear in the Hebrew Bible when their stories advance theological or covenantal themes, as with Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. In the primeval history of Genesis 1 to 11, however, narrative economy leaves many figures unnamed. The daughters of Adam and Eve belong to this literary silence. Early Jewish interpretation sought to fill the gap. By the Second Temple period, interpreters were already wrestling with questions about origins and kinship. If Cain feared being killed after murdering Abel, who else inhabited the earth? Genesis 4 verses 14 to 17 records Cain's anxiety and his departure to the land of Nod, where he takes a wife. The text does not identify her origins. Rabbinic tradition addressed this through midrash, imaginative expansions meant to clarify and explore scriptural ambiguities. Some rabbis propose that Cain and Abel were born with twin sisters, who later became their wives. Others speculated that additional daughters were born to Adam and Eve before or after the tragedy between the brothers. These interpretations did not aim to rewrite scripture, but to reconcile narrative logic with theological conviction that all humanity descended from the first pair. The Book of Jubilees, a Jewish text composed in the 2nd century BCE and preserved most fully in Ge'ez within the Ethiopian Orthodox canon, offers one of the earliest detailed accounts. Jubilees names daughters otherwise absent from Genesis. It identifies Cain's wife as his sister Awan and Seth's wife as Asherah. According to this text, Adam and Eve had numerous children over many decades, with daughters named and woven into the genealogical framework. Jubilees reflects a broader Second Temple interest in systematizing chronology and lineage, providing precise dates and familial connections. Its preservation in Ethiopia highlights the role of the Ethiopian Church in safeguarding ancient Jewish and early Christian literature that did not remain in later Jewish or Western Christian canons. Rabbinic literature, including Genesis Rabbah and later Talmudic discussions, continue to elaborate on the theme. Some traditions propose that Cain's wife was his twin, created alongside him. Others suggested that Abel's potential wife became the subject of rivalry between the brothers. While these expansions vary, they share a commitment to monogenesis, the belief that all humanity descends from a single ancestral pair. The daughters of Adam and Eve thus became necessary figures within theological anthropology, even if Scripture itself offered only minimal detail. Early Christian writers inherited these interpretive challenges. Church fathers such as Augustine of Hippo addressed questions about sibling marriage in the earliest generations. In the City of God, Augustine argued that marriages between brothers and sisters were necessary at the dawn of humanity and did not violate moral law because no alternative existed. For Augustine, divine command and historical circumstance distinguished primordial unions from later prohibitions. His discussion reflects both the centrality of Genesis to Christian doctrine and the need to reconcile its narrative gaps with ethical reflection. Outside canonical and rabbinic traditions, apocryphal writings and later legends embroidered the story further. The Life of Adam and Eve, a text with Jewish origins likely composed in the early centuries CE and transmitted in various languages including Greek, Latin, Armenian, and Georgian, explores the lives of the first couple after their expulsion from Eden. Although it does not extensively detail their daughters, it reflects the same impulse to narrate what Genesis leaves unsaid. In some later Christian and Islamic folklore, additional names appear, sometimes varying widely depending on region and tradition. Islamic tradition, drawing on the Quran and later tafsir literature, also address the issue. The Quran mentions the two sons of Adam but does not name them. Later Islamic commentators, influenced by Jewish and Christian traditions known as Israeliyat, often named Cain's wife and described multiple daughters born in pairs. Some traditions held that each pregnancy produced twins, a male and a female, and that siblings from different births married one another. As in Jewish and Christian interpretation, these accounts aim to preserve both the unity of humanity and the coherence of the narrative. Historical scholarship approaches these traditions with attention to genre and context. The genealogies of Genesis belong to an ancient Near Eastern literary world in which origins were expressed through symbolic narrative rather than modern biological detail. The focus of Genesis 1-11 is theological, emphasizing humanity's relationship with God, the entrance of sin, and the unfolding of divine purpose. The absence of named daughters reflects literary priorities rather than denial of their existence. When Genesis 5 verse 4 notes that Adam had other sons and daughters, it affirms a broader family without elaboration. The daughter's anonymity has nevertheless influenced cultural imagination. In art, literature, and later storytelling, figures such as Owan and Asherah appear as narrative devices to humanize the early chapters of Genesis. Medieval manuscripts sometimes depict Cain's wife as a sister, visually reinforcing interpretive tradition. Renaissance and early modern commentators debated the moral implications of sibling marriage, revealing how ancient narrative details intersected with evolving ethical frameworks. Modern biblical scholarship situates Genesis within its ancient Near Eastern environment. Comparative studies note parallels with Mesopotamian flood narratives and genealogical lists. These parallels do not diminish the distinctiveness of Genesis, but illuminate shared literary conventions. Genealogies in ancient texts often compress generations, omit individuals, and serve theological or political ends. The daughters of Adam and Eve likely belong to a larger oral tradition of origins that was later condensed into written form. Anthropological reflection adds another dimension. Many cultures preserve origin myths that center on a primal couple or ancestral pair. Such narratives function to establish unity, identity, and moral order. The daughter's presence, though minimally described, underscores the narrative's claim that humanity shares a common source. In later theological development, this concept became foundational for doctrines of universal sin and redemption within Christianity, as articulated by Paul in Romans 5. The Ethiopian preservation of texts like Jubilees offers a unique perspective on early Jewish interpretation. In Ethiopia, Jubilees is not merely apocryphal but canonical, integrated into the broader scriptural tradition. Its detailed naming of Adam's daughters reflects a theological culture comfortable expanding upon Genesis to clarify lineage. Ethiopian manuscript traditions demonstrate continuity with ancient Jewish thought, preserving voices otherwise marginalized in Western canon formation. The forgotten daughters also invite reflection on gender in sacred history. Their anonymity mirrors the broader marginalization of women's names in ancient genealogies. Yet their implied existence reminds readers that the story of humanity's beginning depended equally on female presence. Without daughters, there is no continuation of the human family. The narrative economy of Genesis may obscure them, but theological logic requires them. In modern discussions, questions about the daughters sometimes intersect with debates about science and literalism. Some interpret Genesis figuratively, viewing Adam and Eve as symbolic representatives of early humanity. Others maintain historical readings while acknowledging narrative compression. Across interpretive approaches, the daughters remain a testament to the text's layered nature. They are at once historically necessary within the story and literarily understated. The enduring fascination with the daughters of Adam and Eve reveals something profound about sacred narrative. Silence can provoke imagination. A single line, Other Sons and Daughters has generated centuries of commentary, art, and debate. It has linked Jewish midrash, Christian theology, Islamic exegesis, and Ethiopian canon. It has prompted reflection on kinship, morality, and the unity of humankind. To recover the forgotten daughters is not to invent what Scripture denies, but to attend carefully to what it affirms quietly. They stand at the threshold of history, unnamed yet indispensable. Through them, the human story multiplied across valleys and plains, across languages and continents. Their anonymity invites humility and interpretation, reminding readers that sacred texts often speak with deliberate restraint. The history of interpretation surrounding these daughters demonstrates how communities engage Scripture dynamically. Rabbinic sages, church fathers, Islamic commentators, and Ethiopian scholars each responded to the same textual gap in culturally specific ways. Their answers differ in detail, yet converge in affirming that the daughters were real participants in the unfolding human drama. In the end, the forgotten daughters of Adam and Eve represent both absence and presence. They are absent in name but present in necessity. They are silent in Genesis but eloquent in tradition. Their story is not preserved in a single authoritative account but scattered across centuries of reflection. To trace their history is to trace the history of interpretation itself, a testament to humanity's enduring desire to understand its beginnings.